Captain Daniel Wright stood on the bridge of the horizon and stared at the massive structure before him. The Council Station was bigger than anything humanity had ever built. It orbited a neutron star, pulling power from the dying sun itself. Lights sparkled across its surface like a city floating in space. Daniel had seen pictures, but nothing prepared him for the real thing. "Captain, they're hailing us again," said his communications officer. Daniel straightened his uniform. This was it. Humanity's first official meeting with the Galactic Council. After 3 years of careful messages and preliminary talks, Earth had finally been invited to join the galaxy's ruling government. "Put them through," Daniel said. The main screen flickered. An alien appeared, its body covered in dark plates like an insect's shell. Multiple eyes studied Daniel from different angles. This was Chancellor Vexthar, leader of the Council. "Captain Wright, welcome. Please proceed to Docking Bay 7. The full Council awaits you." The horizon moved slowly through the station's outer rings. Daniel watched hundreds of alien ships pass by. Some were sleek and elegant. Others looked like they were grown rather than built. Each one represented a species that had already joined the Council. Soon Earth would be among them. Ambassador Lisa Monroe joined Daniel at the airlock. She was Earth's best diplomat, fluent in 4 human languages and already learning 2 alien ones. Her dark eyes showed no fear, only careful calculation. "Remember," she said quietly, "we're here to listen first. Agree to nothing without consulting home." Daniel nodded. Together they stepped into the station. The council chamber was enormous. Representatives from over 200 species sat in circular rows that rose toward a domed ceiling. Some breathed oxygen like humans. Others sat in special tanks or wore environmental suits. The air smelled strange, a mix of atmospheres that somehow didn't poison anyone. Chancellor Vexthar gestured to 2 empty seats at the chamber's center. Daniel and Lisa sat down, suddenly aware that every alien eye in the room was watching them. "Humans of Earth." Vexthar's voice echoed through the chamber. "You have reached the stars. You have developed faster-than-light communication. You have shown intelligence and promise. The Council welcomes you." Applause came from some species, clicking sounds from others, and vibrations Daniel could feel in his chest. Lisa smiled politely but kept her hands folded. For 10,000 years, the Council has maintained peace across the galaxy. War is rare. Trade flows freely. Knowledge is shared. We offer you a place in this great civilization. A crystalline being rose from the seats, light refracting through its body in rainbow patterns. "I am Speaker Luminous of the Luminari. We were where you are now 3,000 years ago. Young, eager, alone, the Council gave us purpose and protection. We have never regretted joining." Another alien stood, this one floating in a tank of blue liquid. "I am Depth's Walker. My people were dying from a plague when the Council found us. Their medical knowledge saved millions. We owe them everything." More testimonials followed. Each species told a story of how the Council had helped them, guided them, improved their lives. Daniel started to feel hopeful. Maybe this would be good for Earth. Maybe humanity didn't have to figure everything out alone. Then Vexthar began explaining the terms. To join the Council, Earth must follow our established protocols. First, all military spacecraft must be surrendered to Council authority. We will provide defense. You need no weapons. Lisa's expression didn't change, but Daniel saw her hand tighten slightly. Second, population growth must be regulated according to Council guidelines. Earth is crowded by galactic standards. We will help you manage your numbers sustainably. Daniel felt his stomach drop. Who would decide how many children humans could have? Third, all trade must flow through Council networks. This ensures fairness and prevents economic warfare. We will assign Earth a resource allocation appropriate to your development level. Fourth, your education systems must be reformed to include Council history and approved cultural studies. We will send advisors to help guide your youth toward productive thinking. The list continued. Restrictions on space exploration, limits on artificial intelligence research, mandatory technology sharing, required permits for colonizing other worlds in their own solar system. Each term sounded reasonable on the surface, but together they formed a cage. Finally, Vexthar said, Earth will remain within your home system for a probationary period of 500 years. This allows time for proper integration and cultural adjustment. 500 years. Prisoners in their own solar system while the rest of the galaxy moved freely. Lisa stood slowly. Chancellor, may I speak? Of course, Ambassador. These terms seem quite restrictive for a partnership of equals. Murmurs rippled through the chamber. Vexthar's multiple eyes blinked in sequence. Equals? Ambassador Monroe, humanity is barely a century old in space. Most species here have been traveling the stars for millennia. You are children playing with dangerous tools. We offer guidance, not partnership. I see, Lisa said calmly. And if we decline this guidance? The chamber fell silent. Vexthar leaned forward. No species has ever declined council membership. There is no galaxy outside the council. To refuse is to choose isolation, poverty, and eventual extinction. Surely your people are wiser than that. We will need time to consider these terms, Lisa said. Of course. Take one standard year. We are patient. That evening, back aboard the Horizon, Daniel and Lisa sat in the captain's ready room. Neither had spoken much since leaving the station. They don't want partners, Daniel finally said. They want obedient children. Lisa nodded slowly. I spoke privately with one of the reptilian delegates during the reception. He told me something interesting. Every species in the council went through similar integration. Most didn't realize what they were giving up until it was too late. Now they're all dependent on council technology, council trade, council approval for everything. What did his species lose? Their warrior culture. The council deemed it too aggressive. Within 3 generations, they'd forgotten how to fight. Now they rely entirely on council protection. She looked out the window at the distant stars. The council doesn't want diversity. They want conformity. They've built a system where everyone needs them, and no one can leave. What do we tell Earth? Lisa was quiet for a long moment. The truth, that we've been offered a golden cage, and we have to decide if safety is worth our freedom. The Horizon turned toward home, carrying news that would force humanity to make the hardest choice in its history, accept comfort and security under alien rule, or stand alone in a galaxy that suddenly seemed much colder and more dangerous than they'd imagined. As Daniel watched the council station shrink behind them, he wondered what humanity would choose. Would they be brave enough to refuse? Or would fear of the unknown make them submit to aliens who saw them as nothing more than primitives needing supervision? In 1 year, the council would have its answer. Daniel just hoped his people would make the right choice, whatever that was. The United Earth Assembly Chamber in Geneva had never been so crowded. Every nation sent representatives. Every major corporation wanted a voice. Religious leaders, scientists, military commanders, and ordinary citizens packed the galleries. The whole world watched on screens as humanity debated its future. President Jacob Miller stood at the central podium, his gray hair catching the lights. He'd been elected on a platform of peaceful exploration, but now he faced a decision that would define his entire legacy. We have 6 months remaining to give the council our answer, he began. I've asked our experts to present their findings before we vote. The first to speak was General Patricia Hayes, commander of Earth's small defense fleet. She pulled up holographic displays showing the council's military capabilities. They have over 50,000 warships, she said bluntly. We have 200. Their smallest fighters are bigger than our largest battleships. In a direct conflict, we'd last maybe 3 days. Worried murmurs filled the chamber. A representative from the European Union stood. Then we have no choice but to accept their terms. Wait, said Dr. Helen Ross, stepping to the podium. She was younger than most expected, barely 40, with sharp eyes that missed nothing. General Hayes told you about their quantity. Let me tell you about their quality. Helen pulled up technical diagrams. The council gave us data packages about their technology, trying to impress us. But my team has been studying it for months. They're faster than light drives. They work on principles we theorized 15 years ago. We just haven't built one yet because we've been focused on other priorities. Are you saying we could build our own FTL drives? Someone asked. Given time and resources, yes. 5 years, maybe 10. Their medical technology is impressive, but nothing we couldn't develop ourselves. Their computers are actually less advanced than ours in some ways. They banned artificial intelligence research 3,000 years ago because they feared it. Helen's expression grew serious. Here's what I found most interesting. In 10,000 years of council rule, there have been almost no major technological breakthroughs. They've refined existing technology, yes, but created nothing truly new. They've achieved stability by eliminating innovation. Commander Kyle Patterson of Earth's Defense Fleet stood next. He was a tactical analyst who'd spent his career studying military history. I've examined every council military engagement in their records. They fight the same way every time. Massive fleets in standard formations, overwhelming force, simple tactics. It works because no one challenges them anymore. What are you suggesting? President Miller asked. That they're powerful but predictable. They've had no real opposition for millennia. Their forces are vast but stagnant. They've forgotten how to adapt. Kyle paused. I'm not saying we could beat them in a war. I'm saying they might not be as invincible as they appear. An elderly man stood in the gallery. He was a philosopher whose books had influenced a generation. We're talking about military matters, but this is really a philosophical question. What are we willing to surrender for safety? The council wants to control our population, our education, our culture, our very thoughts. If we accept, are we still human? Or do we become something else, shaped by aliens who think they know better? The debate raged for hours. Some argued that humanity was too young, too vulnerable to stand alone. Better to accept restrictions now and work to change them from within later. Others insisted that freedom once surrendered was rarely regained. The council's own history proved that species who joined never left. Finally, Lisa Monroe took the podium. She'd been quiet throughout the debate, but now everyone leaned forward to hear Earth's chief diplomat. I've spoken with dozens of council species over the past months, some officially, some in secret. I want to tell you about the Karathi. They're a mammalian species not unlike us. They joined the council 800 years ago. Before that, they were explorers, artists, warriors. They had a rich culture of debate and disagreement. Lisa pulled up images of the Karathi, both ancient and modern. This is what they looked like before the council. See the variations in their clothing, their architecture, their art. Now look at them today. Every Karathi dresses the same. Their buildings are identical across 1,000 worlds. Their art has become decorative but meaningless. When I asked them about their history, they recited council-approved facts like students repeating a lesson. One young Karathi spoke to me privately. She said her people had forgotten how to disagree. Council advisors had spent generations teaching them that consensus was virtuous and conflict was primitive. Now they can't imagine challenging authority. They've lost the ability to think differently. The chamber was utterly silent. That's what the council offers us. Not partnership, but assimilation. They'll let us keep the appearance of being human while slowly erasing everything that makes us who we are. Lisa's voice grew stronger. I say we refuse. And risk destruction? Someone shouted. Risk? Yes, but consider the alternative. The council doesn't want to destroy us. They want to control us. We're more valuable as members than as martyrs. If we refuse, the worst they'll do is isolate us economically. No trade, no technology sharing, no diplomatic support. President Miller spoke up. Could we survive that isolation? Dr. Helen Ross returned to the podium. We'd have to accelerate our own development programs. Focus our resources on becoming self-sufficient. It would be hard, but yes, I believe we could not only survive but thrive. We have advantages the council doesn't expect. Such as? We're still innovators. We haven't had millennia of stability making us cautious. We're used to solving problems with limited resources. We're adaptable. Helen smiled slightly. And frankly, we're stubborn. We've spent our entire history refusing to accept that things can't be done. The vote came 3 days later. It was close, frighteningly close. Nations that depended on international cooperation tended to favor joining. Those with strong independent traditions leaned toward refusal. In the end, humanity chose freedom by a margin of just 6%. President Miller addressed the world that evening. We have decided to decline the Council's offer of membership. We will establish diplomatic relations and maintain peaceful contact, but we will not surrender our sovereignty. We will not accept restrictions on our growth, our exploration, or our culture. We will stand alone and face whatever comes. Lisa Monroe returned to the Council station 6 months after her first visit. This time she came alone. The Council chamber seemed even more intimidating without Daniel beside her. Chancellor Vexthar's multiple eyes fixed on her. Ambassador Monroe, the Council awaits Earth's decision. Lisa stood straight. Chancellor, people of the Council, Earth is honored by your offer of membership. We value the opportunity to establish diplomatic relations with your many species. However, we must respectfully decline the terms as presented. The chamber erupted. Aliens made sounds of shock, confusion, and anger. Vexthar raised a limb for silence. You understand what this means? No species has ever refused Council membership. You will have no access to our technology, no protection from hostile forces. No trade agreements. Earth will be completely isolated. We understand, Lisa said calmly. Your people will suffer. You will fall behind while the galaxy moves forward. In a century, you'll be so far behind you'll never catch up. You'll come begging to join on any terms we offer. Perhaps, Lisa said. Or perhaps we'll surprise you. This is foolishness. Vexthar's voice rose. You're condemning your species to poverty and isolation out of pride. Lisa allowed herself a small smile. Not pride, Chancellor, hope. Hope that we can build our own future. Hope that freedom is worth the cost. Hope that humanity doesn't need to be controlled to flourish. You'll regret this, Vexthar said coldly. Maybe, Lisa replied, but it will be our regret made by our choice. That's more than I can say for most species in this chamber. She turned and walked out, her footsteps echoing in the stunned silence. Behind her, the council members began arguing among themselves, shocked that anyone would choose independence over their carefully constructed system. As Lisa's shuttle returned to the horizon, she looked back at the council station one last time. She felt no regret, only determination. Humanity had chosen the harder path, but it was their path. Whatever came next, they would face it as free people. Earth had said no to the galaxy. Now they would find out what that truly meant. 5 years had passed since Earth refused the Council's offer. Chancellor Vexthar stood in the Council's intelligence center, reviewing the latest reports on humanity. He'd expected them to collapse within 2 years, 3 at most. Instead, the data before him made no sense. Explain this again, he said to the analyst. A spider-like creature with excellent data processing abilities. Chancellor, Earth's industrial output has increased by 300%. Their population has spread to 4 worlds within their system. They've established 17 major mining operations in their asteroid belt. And this... The analyst hesitated. They've developed their own faster-than-light drive. Impossible. FTL technology takes centuries to develop. Apparently not for humans. The analyst displayed technical specifications. Their design is different from ours. More efficient in some ways. Less refined, but it works. Vexthar's eyes narrowed. And their military? 200 ships 5 years ago. 600 now. Smaller than ours, but with unusual capabilities. They seem designed for speed and adaptability rather than raw power. This was not what Vexthar had planned. Isolation was supposed to cripple them, make them desperate. Instead, humanity was thriving. On Mars, Dr. Helen Ross stood in the viewing dome of Olympus Research Station. The red planet's surface stretched below her, dotted with growing settlements. Earth hung in the distant sky like a blue jewel. Dr. Ross, the test results are ready, her assistant said. Helen moved to the laboratory section. Before her floated a holographic model of humanity's new FTL drive. They'd called it the Pioneer Drive, and it represented 5 years of desperate innovation. The efficiency ratings are better than expected, Helen said, studying the data. The Council's drive uses brute force to punch through space. Ours slides through the gaps. It's like they're breaking down a door while we're picking the lock. Will it work for long-distance travel? The simulations say yes. We could reach Alpha Centauri in 3 weeks. The Council ships take 2 months. Helen smiled. Turns out that when you can't copy someone else's homework, you learn the material better. The past 5 years had been brutal but transformative. With no Council technology to rely on, Earth had poured resources into research and development. Universities expanded. Corporations competed to solve impossible problems. Every setback led to new approaches. But it wasn't just technology. Without Council cultural advisors telling humans how to think, Earth's civilization had exploded with creativity. New art movements emerged. Philosophers debated ideas the Council had suppressed for millennia. Music blended 1,000 traditions into something entirely novel. Admiral Nina Clark walked through the orbital shipyard above Earth. Construction crews worked around the clock building the new fleet. She stopped before the lead ship, still incomplete but already impressive. How long until the Liberty is ready? She asked the chief engineer. 3 months, Admiral. She'll be the first ship equipped with the Pioneer Drive. Nina studied the vessel. It didn't look like Council warships with their heavy armor and massive guns. The Liberty was sleeker, faster, built for maneuverability. Every system had backups. Every weapon could be operated manually if the computers failed. Adaptability over power. The Council thinks in terms of overwhelming force, Nina said. They have 5,000 ships to our 600. But quantity isn't everything. You think they'll attack us? Eventually, yes. We're proof that their system isn't necessary. That threatens everything they've built. Nina turned to the engineer. Make sure every ship can operate independently. No centralized command. If they take out our flagship, the fleet should keep fighting. That's against Council military doctrine. Exactly. Meanwhile, on a distant Council world, something unprecedented was happening. The Karathi people were protesting. Young Karathi filled the streets of their capital city, carrying signs and chanting slogans. Freedom for thought. Question authority. We are not children. The local council enforcer was baffled. The Karathi had been peaceful for 8 centuries. This behavior was completely out of character. What the council didn't know was that secret messages from Earth had been circulating among younger Karathi for years. Stories about humanity's choice, philosophical texts about freedom and self-determination, music that celebrated diversity and disagreement. A young Karathi named Swiftpaw stood on a platform addressing the crowd. Our ancestors were warriors and artists. They debated and disagreed and created. The council took that from us, said we were better off peaceful in uniform. But Earth shows us we were lied to. Council security forces arrived to disperse the protest, but the damage was done. The virus of independent thought was spreading. 3 other species reported similar unrest. The careful stability the Council had maintained for 10,000 years was cracking. And it had only taken humanity 5 years to create those cracks. Back on Earth, President Jacob Miller met with his cabinet in an underground bunker. Security was tight because Council spies were everywhere. Status report, Miller said. Colony populations are growing faster than projected, reported the Secretary of Expansion. People are excited to help build new worlds. We've got waiting lists for Mars, Europa, and Titan. Military readiness? Miller looked at Nina, who'd joined via secure video link. 600 ships operational, another 300 under construction. Training programs are producing excellent pilots. Everyone knows we might have to fight someday, and they're preparing. Economic situation? That's the interesting part, said the Secretary of Commerce. Without Council trade, we had to become completely self-sufficient. It was painful at first, but now our economy is more robust than ever. We produce everything we need. No dependencies, no vulnerabilities. Lisa Monroe, now Secretary of State, spoke up. I've been in contact with sympathetic species through back channels. Several are quietly admiring what we've done. The Karathi are openly defying Council mandates now. 3 other species are considering leaving the Council entirely. Miller absorbed this information. So we're not just surviving isolation. We're thriving, and it's making the Council nervous. More than nervous, Lisa said. We're an existential threat to their entire system. They built a galaxy where everyone believes they need the Council. We've proven that's a lie. Will they attack us? I'd be surprised if they didn't. Lisa's expression was grim. They can't let us continue being an example. Either they force us to submit, or their whole structure collapses. Miller stood and walked to the window. Outside, people went about their lives, unaware that their world might soon face the largest military force in galactic history. Then we prepare, he said quietly. Not just militarily, but culturally. We need to make sure that no matter what happens, the idea of human independence survives. Even if they destroy Earth, the example should live on. He turned back to his cabinet. Get our historians to compile everything about our choice and why we made it. Store copies in every colony, every ship, every station. If we fall, let the galaxy know we fell free. On the Liberty, Captain Brandon Cole supervised the final system checks. The ship would launch in 3 months on humanity's first faster-than-light voyage beyond their solar system. He felt the weight of history on his shoulders. Captain, his first officer said, think we're ready for this? Brandon looked at the stars beyond the viewport. 5 years ago, the Council told us we weren't ready to walk among the stars without their guidance. They wanted us to wait 500 years. Instead, we're about to prove them wrong in every way that matters. They won't like that. No, Brandon agreed. They won't. But that's their problem, not ours. In the Council chambers, Chancellor Vexthar called an emergency session. Representatives from 200 species gathered, many looking worried. The human problem has grown beyond acceptable limits, Vexthar announced. They have not collapsed. They have not come begging for membership. Instead, they flourish, and their example threatens the stability we've maintained for 10 millennia. What do you propose? Asked Speaker Luminous of the Luminari. A final ultimatum. We send our fleet to Earth. We offer them one last chance to join under restricted terms. If they refuse, we will force integration. We will occupy their worlds, dismantle their government, and restructure their society according to council standards. That's conquest, someone objected. That's necessity, Vexthar replied coldly. We cannot allow one stubborn species to destroy everything we've built. The vote will be held tomorrow. The measure passed, though not unanimously. For the first time in council history, several species voted against a major military action. The council's largest fleet began assembling. 300 warships pulled from defensive positions across the galaxy. It would take months to gather them all, but once complete, it would be an unstoppable force. Or so they believed. On Earth, sensors detected the fleet's preparation. Admiral Clark received the intelligence with grim satisfaction. She'd hoped for more time, but humanity would fight with what they had. Send the message to all colonies and ships, she ordered. The Council is coming. We will not surrender. We will not submit. Whatever happens, we remain free. The Liberty emerged from faster-than-light travel at the edge of the Alpha Centauri system. Captain Brandon Cole stood on the bridge watching as the star's light filled the forward screens. This was humanity's first voyage beyond their home system using their own technology, and it felt like liberation. All systems normal, reported his science officer. The Pioneer drive performed flawlessly. Travel time was 3 weeks and 2 days. Brandon allowed himself a smile. The Council said we needed 500 years before we were ready to explore. We did it in 5. Captain, I'm detecting a settlement on the 4th planet. Non-Council design. This was unexpected. The Council claimed to control all explored space, yet here was evidence of someone else. Brandon ordered the Liberty to approach carefully. The settlement was small, maybe a few thousand inhabitants. The beings who lived there were plant-based, their bodies a mix of green and brown fibrous material. They communicated through chemical signals that Brandon's crew had to translate with computers. We are the Verdani, their leader explained through the translation device. We left Council space 300 years ago. They wanted to restrict our growth, literally. We reproduced through spores, and they called it uncontrolled. We chose exile instead. You've survived out here alone? It's been difficult, but yes. We grow slowly but persistently like all plants. The Verdani leader seemed curious. You're human, yes? We heard stories. The species that said no to the Council. That's us, Brandon confirmed. Fascinating. No one refuses the Council. Yet here you are exploring freely. The Verdani swayed in what might have been respect. Would your people consider trade? We have developed unique agriculture techniques. You have metalworking capabilities we lack. This was humanity's first independent alliance, formed not through council networks but through mutual respect and need. Brandon spent 3 weeks establishing basic trade agreements and cultural exchanges. When the Liberty finally left, it carried seeds of Verdani plants and promises of future cooperation. More importantly, it carried proof that the galaxy beyond the Council's reach was full of opportunities. Over the next 6 months, Brandon and other human exploration vessels discovered a dozen independent settlements and species. Some had left the Council voluntarily. Others had simply developed too far away to be worth Council attention. All were interested in Earth. You actually refused them? Asked a reptilian trader whose species had never heard of the Council. And they let you live? They're still deciding what to do about us, Brandon admitted. Then you might need friends. The reptilian gestured to the stars. There are more of us out here than the Council admits. Species who don't want their rules, their restrictions. If you're building something different, many would join you. Meanwhile, in Council space, the situation deteriorated rapidly. The Karathi had officially petitioned to leave the Council. When their request was denied, they declared independence anyway. Council enforcers arrived at the Karathi homeworld to find defenses they didn't know existed. The Karathi had secretly been building weapons for years, inspired by humanity's example. The enforcers retreated without firing a shot, unwilling to start a war. 3 other species formally announced they were reconsidering their membership. The Council's economic networks, carefully designed to make everyone dependent, began showing strain. Species realized they'd been kept deliberately weak and they were angry about it. Chancellor Vexthar watched his orderly galaxy come apart and blamed humanity for everything. If these stubborn primates had just accepted their place, none of this would be happening. The fleet is assembled, his military commander reported. 300 warships ready to depart for Earth. How long until they arrive? 2 months using standard Council drives. Send them immediately. and make the message clear: submit or be destroyed. The Council fleet was the largest military force assembled in 4,000 years. Each ship carried enough firepower to level a city. Together they could devastate a planet. The fleet commander, an ancient warrior from a species that had long ago forgotten how to fight, felt confident in overwhelming victory. Earth's sensors detected the fleet when it was still 6 weeks away. Admiral Nina Clark watched the tactical display with cold calculation. 300 ships against her 600, but the Council ships were 3 times larger. In raw firepower, humanity was outnumbered 5-1. "Admiral, should we evacuate the civilian populations?" her staff officer asked. "No," Nina said firmly. "If we start evacuating, we've already lost. We defend our home with everything we have." She began deploying the fleet in unusual patterns. Small groups of ships scattered throughout the solar system, hiding near asteroids and moons. No concentrated formations, no obvious command structure. Each group operated independently with pre-planned coordination. The Council would expect a traditional defense, humanity's fleet gathering near Earth, protecting the homeworld directly. Instead, Nina would turn their entire solar system into a battlefield where Council advantages in size and power meant less. President Miller addressed Earth and all the colonies. "The Council fleet comes to force us into submission. They believe we'll surrender when we see their power. They're wrong. 5 years ago, we chose freedom over safety. Today, we prove that choice was right. Whatever happens, we stand together and we stand free." On Mars, Dr. Helen Ross worked frantically on a new weapon, not a traditional gun or missile, but something the Council wouldn't expect. If humanity couldn't match Council firepower, they'd have to think differently. "It's a virus," she explained to President Miller over secure communication. "Not biological, but digital. It targets the Council's central command systems. Their fleet operates on shared networks for coordination. We've been studying their protocols for 5 years. Can you guarantee it will work?" "In war, nothing is guaranteed, but our simulations show a 70% chance of disrupting their fleet coordination for at least 20 minutes. In battle, that could be enough." Miller approved the weapon's deployment. It wasn't honorable or fair, but neither was bringing 300 warships to force 8 billion people into slavery. Captain Brandon Cole and the Liberty received the emergency recall. They were 3 months from Earth when the message arrived, too far to reach home before the battle. But Brandon had an idea. He'd spent months building relationships with independent species. Now he sent messages to all of them. "Earth faces destruction for choosing freedom. We're not asking you to fight our battle, but if you believe in the right of species to choose their own path, now is the time to show it." He expected maybe a few ships in response. What he got shocked him. The Verdani sent their entire defense fleet, 15 ships grown from living wood. The Karathi, already at war with the Council, dispatched 20 vessels. A dozen other species contributed what they could. Some sent only 1 or 2 ships, but each one represented a choice to stand with humanity. Within 3 weeks, Brandon commanded a fleet of 68 ships from 17 different species. It wasn't nearly enough to defeat the Council, but it sent a message. Humanity wasn't alone. The galaxy was bigger than the Council's controlled space, and not everyone accepted their authority. The Liberty turned toward Earth at maximum speed. In the Council chambers, Chancellor Vexthar received reports of the Allied fleet forming around humanity. He dismissed it as irrelevant. 68 ships couldn't stop 300, and half of them were primitive designs from backwater species. What worried him more was the political situation. 27 species had now formally protested the attack on Earth. 5 had threatened to leave the Council if the invasion proceeded. The Luminari, usually his strongest supporters, were staying conspicuously silent. "Should we delay the fleet?" his advisor asked. "No. If we show weakness now, the entire Council structure collapses. We must prove that defiance has consequences. Once Earth falls, the others will remember their place." But Vexthar felt doubt for the first time in his long life. Humanity had already defied every prediction. They'd survived isolation, developed technology faster than should be possible, and now had allies from species the Council barely remembered existed. What if they defied expectations one more time? On Earth, Admiral Nina Clark gathered her ship commanders via holographic conference. Hundreds of faces looked at her, human and alien alike. The Verdani had arrived just days earlier. The Karathi ships had come despite orders from their own government to stay neutral. "In 12 hours, the Council fleet arrives," Nina said. They expect us to either surrender or fight a traditional battle we can't win. We're going to give them something they've never experienced before. Chaos, she explained the plan. No grand formations, no fleet actions. Instead, small groups would hit and run, never letting the Council bring their full power to bear. Dr. Ross's virus would launch first, hopefully disrupting their coordination. After that, it was fluid tactics and individual initiative. They've forgotten how to adapt, Nina said. Every battle they've fought for thousands of years followed the same pattern. They don't know how to respond to unpredictability. That's our advantage. Admiral, one of the Karathi commanders spoke up. This is a desperate plan. Yes, Nina agreed, but desperate isn't the same as hopeless. The virus hit the Council fleet like a hammer. One moment, 300 warships moved in perfect formation, their systems synchronized through shared networks. The next moment, chaos. Ship computers crashed and rebooted. Communications went silent. Weapon systems locked up. Navigation displays showed false readings. For 18 critical minutes, the Council fleet was blind and helpless. Admiral Nina Clark didn't waste a second. All units execute attack pattern Delta. Hit them now while they're confused. Human ships and their allies struck from every direction. Small groups of 3 or 4 vessels targeted individual Council ships, firing everything they had before retreating into the asteroid belt. The Council vessels were tougher, but they couldn't fight back effectively while their systems rebooted. By the time the Council fleet restored their systems, they'd lost 7 ships and 16 more were damaged. The fleet commander stared at his tactical display in shock. How had primitives penetrated their military networks? Reform defensive formation, he ordered. Find their main fleet and destroy it. But there was no main fleet. Human ships operated in independent groups with no central command. When the Council sent 50 ships to hunt one group, they found only empty space. The humans had already moved. Meanwhile, another group hit the Council fleet's supply vessels, destroying 3 and forcing the others to retreat under heavy guard. The Council commander had never experienced this kind of warfare. Where was the enemy's command ship? Where was their strategy? The answer was everywhere and nowhere. Every human captain made their own tactical decisions within broad operational guidelines. When the Council adapted to one approach, humans switched to another. It was like fighting smoke. Captain Brandon Cole and his allied fleet of 68 ships arrived at the battle's edge. He could see the chaos even from a distance. The Council fleet was 10 times larger but completely disorganized, chasing scattered human units while taking constant damage from unexpected angles. We hit their rear elements, Brandon ordered. The Verdani ships will target their engines. Karathi vessels focus on their sensors. Everyone else weapons free on targets of opportunity. After 3 attack runs, we retreat to Jump Point Beta. The Allied fleet swept through the Council's rear guard like wolves through sheep. The Verdani ships, grown from living wood and equipped with human weapons, proved surprisingly effective. The Karathi, who'd been studying human tactics for months, fought with precision and aggression. The Council fleet tried to respond, but they couldn't be everywhere at once. Every time they concentrated forces to deal with one threat, another appeared somewhere else. On Earth, President Miller watched the battle unfold on tactical displays. They were actually winning, though the cost was heavy. Humanity had lost 40 ships already, nearly 7% of their fleet, but the Council had lost 32, including some of their largest battleships. They're not adapting, observed Commander Kyle Patterson, who was coordinating tactical analysis from Earth. They keep trying to reform standard battle formations. It's not working, but they can't seem to try anything else. 10,000 years without a real challenge, Miller said. They've forgotten how to innovate under pressure. Dr. Helen Ross rushed into the command center. Sir, I'm detecting something. The Council fleet is preparing to use weapons we haven't seen before. High-energy signatures that match theoretical planet-killer descriptions. Miller felt ice in his stomach. They're going to bombard Earth? If they can't force us to surrender, they might try to terrify us into it by destroying a colony world first. Miller made a decision he'd hoped to avoid. Nina, execute Protocol Omega. In space, Admiral Clark received the order she'd been dreading. Protocol Omega meant revealing humanity's ultimate deterrent. Activate the Mars platforms, she commanded. On Mars, hidden beneath the regolith, weapon platforms that had been under construction for years powered up. They were massive railguns, capable of accelerating projectiles to near-light speed. Dr. Ross had designed them after studying ancient human warfare principles. You didn't need fancy energy weapons when a rock traveling fast enough could split a ship in half. 15 platforms fired simultaneously. Their targets were the Council's largest battleships, the ones preparing planet-killer weapons. The projectiles crossed millions of kilometers in minutes, moving too fast for the Council's defenses to intercept. 5 Council battleships simply exploded. The kinetic energy released was equivalent to nuclear weapons. 3 more were catastrophically damaged. In 5 seconds, the Council lost their heaviest hitters and the capability to threaten Earth directly. The Council fleet commander stared at his displays in horror. What kind of primitives built weapons like that? All ships retreat to minimum engagement range, he ordered. Regroup and reassess. But Nina didn't give him time to regroup. Press the attack. Don't let them recover. The battle raged for 2 more days. It wasn't clean or glorious. Ships on both sides were destroyed. People died in the cold vacuum of space. But slowly, inevitably, the Council fleet began to break. They'd come expecting an easy victory over primitives. Instead, they found themselves fighting the most unconventional and adaptive enemy they'd ever faced. Every tactic they tried was countered. Every formation was exploited. The humans fought like nothing in Council military history. On the 3rd day, with the Council fleet reduced to 208 operational ships and humanity down to 473, Admiral Clark made an unexpected move. She opened a communication channel to the Council fleet commander. Commander, your fleet is damaged and demoralized. You've lost nearly 1/3 of your ships. We can continue this battle until one of us is destroyed, or we can stop now. The Council commander, his pride shattered and his certainty gone, listened. We don't want to destroy you, Nina continued. We never did. We just want to be left alone to live as we choose. Take your remaining ships and go home. Tell the Council that humanity will defend its freedom. But we're not conquerors. We're just people who refuse to be controlled. The Council won't accept defeat. Then don't call it defeat. Call it a strategic withdrawal. Tell them that forcing us into submission would cost more than it's worth. We both know that's true now. The Council commander made a decision that would end his career but save thousands of lives. Fleet order. Disengage and form up for return to Council space. The mission is concluded. Some Council ships wanted to keep fighting, but most were relieved. They'd never experienced anything like this battle, and they had no desire to continue. As the Council fleet retreated, Brandon Cole's allied group moved alongside them as escorts, making sure they actually left. The Council ships limped away, damaged and defeated, carrying news that would shake their civilization to its foundations. On Earth, celebrations erupted. They'd done the impossible. They'd faced the galaxy's greatest military power and survived. More than survived, they'd won. But Admiral Nina Clark didn't celebrate. She stood on the bridge of her flagship, looking at the casualty reports. 3,417 human deaths, 623 allied casualties from other species. 41 ships destroyed, many more damaged. Was it worth it? Her first officer asked quietly. Nina thought about the Council's terms. Surrender of all weapons, population control, cultural suppression, 500 years confined to one system. The slow erasure of everything that made humanity human. Yes, she said finally. Freedom always costs something. The question is whether you're willing to pay the price. We were. They weren't. The aftermath of the battle reshaped the galaxy in ways no one expected. The Council didn't collapse immediately, but it transformed fundamentally. Chancellor Vexthar resigned in disgrace. The species that had protested the invasion gained political power. Within a year, the Council's structure changed from a controlling hierarchy to something closer to an actual cooperative alliance. Dozens of species left outright, choosing independence. Others stayed but demanded and received reformed terms. The Council's 10,000-year grip on galactic civilization loosened, and innovation that had been suppressed for millennia began to flourish. Humanity continued spreading among the stars, but not as empire builders. Earth became a symbol of resistance to tyranny and a refuge for species seeking self-determination. Captain Brandon Cole led the exploration fleet deeper into uncharted space, establishing relationships based on mutual respect rather than dominance. Dr. Helen Ross and her research teams shared their technological breakthroughs freely with any species that asked, believing that lifting everyone up was better than keeping advantages for themselves. The galaxy became more chaotic, more diverse, and infinitely more interesting. 10 years after refusing the Council's first offer, Ambassador Lisa Monroe stood before a very different galactic assembly. Representatives from over 300 species attended, including many who'd never been part of the original Council. The new Council speaker, a young Karathi who'd been part of the original protest inspired by humanity, addressed the assembly. "We invite Earth to join the reformed Galactic Council, not as subordinates requiring guidance, but as equals. No restrictions on your growth, your exploration, or your culture. No probation period, no surrender of sovereignty. Simply cooperation between free peoples." President Jacob Miller, now nearing the end of his second T,